शुक्लाम्बरधरं विष्णुं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये। ॐ सिन्दूरारुणविग्रहां त्रिनयनां माणिक्यमौलिस्फुरत्तारानायकशेखरां स्मितमुखीमापीनवक्षोरुहां पाणिभ्यां मलिपूर्णरत्नचषकं रक्तोत्पलं बिभ्रतीं सौम्यां रत्नघटस्थरक्तचरणां ध्यायेत् परामम्बिकाम्। ॐ ध्यायेन्नित्यं महेशं रजतगिरिनिभं चारुचन्द्रावतंसं रत्नाकल्पोज्ज्वलाङ्गं परशुमृगवराभीतिहस्तं प्रसन्नं पद्मासीनं समन्तात् स्तुतममरगणैः व्याघ्रकृत्तिं वसानं विश्वाद्यं विश्वबीजं निखिलभयहरं पञ्चवक्त्रं त्रिनेत्रम्। ॐ नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्ससुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत्।
धृतराष्ट्र उवाच धर्मक्षेत्रे कुरुक्षेत्रे समवेतायुयुत्सवः मामकाः पाण्डवाश्चैव किमकुर्वत सञ्जय। श्रीभगवानुवाच क्लैब्यं मास्मगमः पार्थ नैतत्त्वय्युपपद्यते क्षुद्रं हृदय दौर्बल्यं त्यक्त्वोत्तिष्ठ परन्तप। यदा यदा हि धर्मस्य ग्लानिर्भवति भारत अभ्युत्थानमधर्मस्य तदात्मानं सृजाम्यहम्। परित्राणाय साधूनां विनाशाय च दुष्कृतां धर्म संस्थापनार्थाय संभवामि युगे युगे। वीतराग भयक्रोधा मन्मया मामुपाश्रिताः बहवो ज्ञानतपसा पूता मद्भावमागताः। कर्मणि अकर्म यः पश्येत् अकर्मणि च कर्म यः स बुद्धिमान् मनुष्येषु स युक्तः कृत्स्नकर्म कृत्। ब्रह्मार्पणं ब्रह्महविर्ब्रह्माग्नौ ब्रह्मणाहुतं ब्रह्मैव तेन गन्तव्यं ब्रह्मकर्म समाधिना। श्रेयान् द्रव्यमयात् यज्ञात् ज्ञानयज्ञः परन्तप सर्वं कर्म अखिलं पार्थ ज्ञाने परिसमाप्यते तद्विद्धि प्रणिपातेन परिप्रश्नेन सेवया उपदेक्ष्यन्ति ते ज्ञानं ज्ञानिनः तत्त्वदर्शिनः यत् ज्ञात्वा न पुनर्मोहम् एवं यास्यसि पाण्डव येन भूतान्यशेषेण द्रक्ष्यसि आत्मनि अथो मयि तस्मात् अज्ञानसम्भूतं हृत्सं ज्ञानासिनात्मनः छित्त्वा एनं संशयं योगम् आतिष्ठ उत्तिष्ठ भारत न कर्तृत्वं न कर्माणि लोकस्य सृजति प्रभुः न कर्मफलसंयोगं स्वभावस्तु प्रवर्तते नादत्ते कस्यचित् पापं न च एव सुकृतं विभुः अज्ञानेनावृतं ज्ञानं तेन मुह्यन्ति जन्तवः ये हि संस्पर्शजा भोगा दुःखयोनय एव ते आद्यन्तवन्तः कौन्तेय न तेषु रमते बुधः
Very nice. Thank you, Rakesh. Most delightful. So last time we were reading Shashtha.
We're at 40, we stopped at 44.
Indeed. So the question preceding this, Arjuna asks Bhagavan Sri Krishna, what happens, what is the fate of a yogi who fails to attain perfection? And does he fall like a rent cloud? And is all his practice perishing with himself? Having fallen off from both karma and yoga, confounded and unestablished in the path of Brahman, apratishtaha vimudhaha brahmanapati, does he not perish like a scattered cloud? Chinna brahmiva nashyati. So this is of course an important doubt, and he says that only you, O Krishna, can dispel this doubt in its entirety. So then Bhagavan says, Partha naiveha namutra vinashastasya vidyate nahi kalyanakrit kaschit durgatim tata gacchati. Neither in this world nor in the world to be, namutra, does he come to ruin. So then what happens to him? Prapya punya kritan lokan ushitva shashwati sama shuchinam srimatangehe yoga brashto abhijayate. This yoga brashta, the one who has fallen from the path of yoga, having attained the worlds, the realms, which are generated by punya, the spheres of the meritorious. Ushitva Shashwati Samaha, sojourning there for long years, long-lasting years. Then he is born in the home of some pure and prosperous household, Shuchinam Srimatam. Or, Athava Yoginameva Kule, Bhavati Dhimatam, Etadhik Durlabhataram Loke Janma Yadi Drisham. Or he is born in the family of yogis, of wise yogis. Yoginam Dhimatam. Etadhi Durlabhataram. This is very difficult, far harder indeed, rarer in the world. Loke Janma Yad Idrisham. So, essentially, whatever efforts are made towards yoga, any efforts towards knowing the self always accrue in this indestructible bank account. And although their fruits may not seem to be received, they are always there, working inside and accruing benefit at the right time. So, what happens then in that next life when he is born? Tatra tam buddhi samyogam labhate paurvadehikam yatate cha tato bhuyah samsiddhau kurunandana. There he acquires memory of the ideas relating to his previous body. Remember, I think we referred to the Yoga Sutra, aparigraha sthairye janma katam tha sambodha. By being established in the practice of aparigraha, which is one of the ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha. So, one of the yamas. The fruit of that establishment is the knowledge of previous births, but that knowledge is not, one may say, so critical or necessary. It is a byproduct siddhi on the way. And that, what does that knowledge bestow? It is simply the union with buddhi. And he labors harder. Yatataha cha tato bhuyah samsiddhau kurunandana. He labors harder, O Bharata Prince, to achieve perfection. And of course, from a practical sense also, I think you have seen this, when we see certain prodigies, musical prodigies, even in Western music, they say Mozart started composing at age 3. It's unimaginable. But even in classical tradition, we have, how can somebody master music to that level in 3 years? It must definitely be a byproduct of previous births. Actually, there was another interesting study I was reading. I don't know, I might have mentioned it before. That the sense of touch is developed in the fetus before even other senses. So why this is important is our Vedic knowledge already tells us that there is an ordering of the senses. And the most subtle, even more subtle than touch, is actually hearing. Right? So that is why we say that even when the child is in the fetus, that the recitation of Vedic mantras is actually received by the child. So even from the instant of birth, so to speak, if one counts the instant of conception, there is already some learning going on. But it's also then conceivable to extend that back, that this learning is encoded in some way deeply into the mind of the human being. Another thing that is observed in scientific studies is birds, for instance. Through the call, even in the egg, the chick to be, baby bird, is already learning about sounds and how to, there are actually studies on birds that demonstrate this. So much so that when certain species of birds get extinct in like Hawaii, they then record the bird sound so that at least the newly hatched ones listen to it, so that when they come out, they are trained. So nature has a very deep way of instructing. So this should not be difficult to conceive that indeed this memory can be tapped into, and it's available to everybody. It is not just anyone. Anyone can tap into this, provided they are willing to make the effort to resort to buddhi. Sometimes we call these archetypes. Jung used to call these archetypes. There is a cultural memory, right? Also. So this vast library of cultural memory one can tap into through meditation. Then let us read 44. I think we should read next, right? Pranav and Rakesh?
I think we stopped at 44. 44 is finished.
We have not read 44, I believe.
Yes, Professor.
Oh,
Huh. Who is going to read?
I can go.
Please go ahead.
पूर्वव्यासेन तैनेव ह्रियते ह्यावसोऽपि सः जिज्ञासुरपि योगस्य सप्तब्रह्माति वर्तते.
Very good. Thank you. पूर्व अभ्यासेन तेनैव ह्रियते ह्यवशोऽपि सः जिज्ञासुरपि योगस्य शब्द ब्रह्म अतिवर्तते. This is a very powerful verse. ह्रियते हि अवशो अपि सः. In a sense, one is drawn irresistibly to this practice. And truly, this has to be experienced. When the call and the tug comes, resistance is not even an option. Whatever the situation be, that person will be drawn to it. Hriyate hi avashopi saha. So is the power of the Lord. Purva abhyasena tenaiva. He is attracted to his prior discipline. Purva abhyas, or actually by his prior discipline, because it's instrumental case. By that prior discipline, even though he is not a master, he is drawn to it. And this is a fantastic thing to contemplate on, right? Then the next verse says, even he who desires to know about yoga, jigyasurapi yogasya, shabda brahma ativartate, he goes beyond the sphere of Vedic injunctions. So, Bhagavan is placing such a great importance on even simply the desire to know about yoga. So let us read the Bhashyam a little bit here. Purva abhyasena iti. Yaha purva janmani kritaha abhyasaha sa purva abhyasa. Again, that's a kind of nirukta statement. What is purva abhyas? That was done in previous words. Tena eva balavata hriyate. From that power itself, through its balam, through its strength, potent yogic discipline. Hriyate samsiddhau hi yasmat avashah api saha yoga brashtah tena kritam chet yoga abhyasajat samskarat balavattaram dharmadi lakshanam karma. So this samskar that has been generated, this impression, if he has performed righteous works, he is attracted by their impressions in his mind. Dharmadi lakshanam karma. Adharmaha chet balavattarah kritah tena yogajo api samskarah abhibhuyate eva. If unrighteous works have been performed, indeed they will subdue his impressions of yoga practice. Tat kshayetu, when the more potent impressions weaken, yoga jaha samskara swayameva karya arabhate. The yogic impressions assert themselves in the results they produce. Na dirgha kalasthasyapi vinashaha tasya asti ityartha. Even when those yogic impressions are held up for a long period, they do not die. So in the Yoga Sutra, there is a analogy of kshetrikavat, just like a farmer. Kshetra is field. What is the analogy to the farmer? Farmer, when he irrigates the field, the water is coming. All he does is remove the mud to let the water flow towards the field. Right? So similarly, this intrinsic power is there. The yogic energy is there in the whole world all the time. It does not have to be acquired anew. What is needed is to remove the obstacles, to let it flow. Right? Those obstacles are created by, as he says here, adharmic deeds done in the past. They may hold up for a little bit. The dam will not hold forever of adharmic deeds. Right? It may block the flow of that yogic energy for some time. But that the work done towards those impressions that built up that energy are never going to die away entirely. Once the dharmic deed cease, it flows. I think Martin Luther King has a saying, which is a nice saying, which in a way says the same thing. He says, if I remember it right, I may be misquoting, the arc of history is very long, but it tends towards justice. It's the same thing.
जी.
Right? Then, what does Bhagavan Shakracharya say after this? Ataha जिज्ञासुः अपि योगस्य स्वरूपं ज्ञातुम् इच्छन् अपि योगमार्गे प्रवृत्तः. Jignasuh api, even one who seeks to comprehend the essence of yoga, begins to tread the path of yoga. That is the world-renouncing yogin who has slipped, as logic implies in this context. Sannyasi yoga bhrashtaha samarthyat so api shabda brahma vedokta karmanusthana phalam ativartate. He goes beyond the sphere of the fruits of the Vedic works. The sphere of the fruits of the Vedic works extends as far as Swargalok. Correct? Even that he is exceeding. Atikramati apakarishyati kim uta buddhva sa yagam, that should be yogam, tannishta abhyasam kuryat. What then to speak of one who fully understands yoga and is devoted to his practice? If even the one who is interested transcends that swarlok, bhur bhuva swa, and is beginning to enter the lokas of the higher, mahajana tapa, satya, etc. Just one who is interested. What then to speak of the one who fully understands and is devoted to its practice? Kutasya yogitvam shreyah iti. An additional reason for yoga superiority. Next one, please. Who is reading 45?
Yeah, I'll go. प्रयत्नाद्यत्मानस्तु योगी संशुद्धि किल्बिषः अनेक जन्म संसिद्धिः अस्ततो याति परां गतिम्.
Prayatnat yatamanastu. Prayatnat, through effort. Prayatnat iti. Prayatnat yatamanaha. Yogi samshuddha kilbishaha. Aneka janma samsiddhaha. Tato yati param gatim. So, yogi who strives hard, who has perfected in the course of many lives, who has been perfected in the course of many lives, aneka janma samsiddhaha. Tato yati, he then attains the supreme goal. How? All his sins being washed away. Samshuddha kilbisha. Kilbisha are the sins. Samshuddha is purified. Who strives hard, who labors much, prayatnatiti. The yogi is the knower whose sins have been washed away and who has perfected himself through the accumulation of good impressions in small measures in many lives. Prayatnat yatamanaha adhikataram yatamanaha ityarthaha. तत्र योगी विद्वान् संशुद्ध किल्बिषः विशुद्ध किल्बिषः संशुद्ध पापः अनेक जन्म संसिद्धः अनेकेषु जन्मसु किंचित किंचित संस्कार जातम् उपचित्य तेन उपचितेन अनेक जन्म कृतेन संसिद्धः अनेक जन्म संसिद्धः ततः लब्ध सम्यक् दर्शनः having obtained that equality of vision san yati param prakrishtam gatim, he then reaches the supreme goal. So there are two things. One is it is an inspiration. Okay. Two is the cumulative nature of effort. And of course, the emphasis on prayatnat, yatamana. Yasmat evam tasmat. Such being the case. Next one, please.
I can go.
Please.
Tapasvi.
Sure. Oh, okay.
तपस्विभ्योऽधिको योगी ज्ञानिभ्योऽपि मतोऽधिकः कर्मिभ्यस्वाधिको योगी तस्मात् योगी भव अर्जुन.
Very good. Tapasvibhyah adhikah. He is superior to those who are doing tapas, austerities. Tapasvibhyah adhikah, yogi. Jnanibhyah api mato adhikah. In my reckoning, he is deemed superior even to the knower of the Vedas. Karmibhyascha adhikah, those who do works. Tasmat, therefore, yogi bhava Arjuna. O Arjuna, be a yogi. So Bhagavan, knowing, being the ultimate psychologist, knows how to encourage the person whose particular inclination is towards that, right? So these are not contradictory. In every adhyaya, he will say, this is the best way. That he doesn't play favorites. All he is saying is, if these inclinations are in you, cultivate them, right? It's not contradictory. He knows that at that stage, the person thinks that there are 4 different ways and I'm inclined more to this way. He says, no, that's fine. I inspire you. This is the best thing. Do it. Just do it, right? This is the brilliance of his psychology, his psychiatry, right? The master psychologist. So therefore he says, be a yogi. If this is what you like, this is your inclination, push forward with full effort. Acha, there's not much to think here. Maybe briefly we can look. Tapasvibhya adhika yogi jnanibhya jnanam atra shastrartha pandityam. According to Bhagavan Sri Shankaracharya, this is shastrartha pandityam. He is not talking about Brahma jnanam here. Because that is, after all, the lakshya of the yogi. Right? In that sense, jnanibhya is used here to mean shastrartha pandityam. Tadbhyaha api mataha gyataha adhikaha sreshtha iti. Karmibhyaha agnihotradi karma. Tadbhya adhika yogi vishishta. And this is important. First of all, the misconception that we have is karma is something which we just do. Then clarification comes. By karma in these texts is meant Vaidika karma. Right? Even in that, already we heard Sarva karma khilam partha jnanam parisamapyate. All those works have their end only in the jnana. Even the performance of Agnihotra, which is highly recommended as a daily practice. How can, so then, in today's world, a doubt may arise. Let us say we start on the path of karma. We perform the nitya karmas, right? And the Nitya Karmas, there is no end to them. You can start with Sandhyavandanam. Then one should do Trikala Sandhyavandanam, Madhyanikam. Brahma Yagyam has to be done. Okay. Then if you do Brahma Yagyam, Agnihotram, Upasanam, these have to be done. Okay. And if one starts opening up the compendium, there should be Shannavati Pitru Tarpanams have to be done. 96 Pitru Tarpanams have to be done in a year. Okay. So naturally, in today's world, people will get overwhelmed. Right? So there's no end to this. Then let me not do anything. This is too much. Right? That's not the meaning. But what Bhagavan is saying is, however, if you do it with the knowledge of the meaning and you pursue that yoga, right, that will place you in a way that is even superior to the one who is doing the Agnihotra. This path will lead you, correct? And definitely I can give you affirmation of that. Those works they are important, they have a place, they are correct, there is nothing wrong in what they say. But again, through the performance of those works, the mind gets purified. When the mind gets purified, it becomes ready to take the path of yoga, right? And reach the end, the goal. So in that sense is what Bhagavan is saying here. Any questions or comments on this? I will give a short break and then we can read the last verse of this adhyay. But I think this is a good place to take some comments or questions.
Yeah, I have a question.
Certainly.
So in the 44th verse, where Bhagavan says that even the aspiration of even the seeker of a yogi is beyond the world of the fruits of Vedic rituals. What does that imply for a seeker?
So exactly. So what it says is that the very attraction to yoga indicates a desire to transcend the first three lokas. Not everybody is drawn to yoga. Many people are not drawn to meditation. Many people are actually very interested in the exact performance of the Karma Kanda.
But that itself does not carry any weight, right? People do it to get somewhere, to get something, right? Which itself is an aspiration for yoga. Even Karma Kanda.
I wouldn't say that. There are these, exactly what he says. I'm looking for the exact word that the Shastra, Shastrartha Pandityam. Correct? You go to many Veda Pathshalas. These people are very well versed in the Vedam, and it's nothing to sneer at. It's a very difficult course of study. And you go to many temples, there are many priests who are very well versed. They are very competent. They've spent the time doing it. This is definitely admirable, right? But it may not necessarily spark an interest in the yoga. Is that difference clear?
Yes.
And through those practices, definitely the three worlds are attained. That is Bhurbhuva, that is happiness in Bhulokam, the safe passage to Pitralokam, and the enjoyment through punyas of Swargalokam. These are definitely attained. There is no doubt about that. The Vedic practices and karmas will definitely guarantee that. This purification happens, right? When that purification has reached a certain level, then the mind says, this is all okay, but I want something even greater than this. I would like to transcend this simple action and fruit exchange, right? And what Bhagavan is saying is, when that even the desire to transcend that arises in a person, it means that they are ready to transcend this cycle of action and fruit and the desire for that fruit. So it's meant to inspire everybody.
Ji.
He's giving everybody a great compliment and A on your report card. Any other questions?
So, Dr. Sanghar, quick question on the what we just discussed. So the main goal or main thing to find out or figure out is trying to find each one's obstacle, right? Like what is drawing, shaping the energy, and for everyone it's going to be different, right? So I need to observe that, right? Vigilant of being what my tendency and what I'm drawn to, right? I mean, we have the tendency that is this Vedic, the realization. We have that, but this is like talk of energy is being shaped by other obstacles. So need to find out, and the sooner we find out, the quicker the progress gonna be. Would that be the right assessment?
I would say that the finding out is a byproduct. So if one sits in dhyan and follows the procedure of, say, in Yoga Sutra, so you follow the Ashtanga, Asana, Pranayama. We just finished that. Every day we do, no? Right? Pranayama, Pratyahar, Dharana, Dhyan, Samadhi. So every time one follows that procedure, you put a groove into the deep impression in the mind, in the Karana Sharir. There is a groove that is being deepened, right? And in the Yoga Sutra it says, particularly of Samadhi, Tajja Samskara, Anya Samskara Pratibandhi. It automatically takes care of eliminating those other obstacles. So in some sense, what I'm trying to say is that rather than entering on a quest of the obstacles themselves, as you might do in a psychological or psychiatric exercise, right? Our approach, the yogic approach, is apply the yoga, right? The obstacles will naturally be revealed and overwhelmed. As you practice, it will become clear to you what are my obstacles. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that is a holistic.
Yeah, practice sincerely. The moment you sit in dhyan, you already know. I mean, this is a very textbook sort of procedure, right? The moment you sit in dhyan, you already know what your obstacles are, right? And although the obstacles seem different for different people, again, Yoga Sutra has boiled them down into, first of all, we know that the Samyak Darshana does not happen because of the kleshas. And they are only 5 in number. Avidya, Asmita, Raga, Dvesha, Abhinimesha. Right? In spite of the tremendous diversity of human life and our experiences, it is these 5 that are at the root, right? If you want to talk specifically of obstacles, there are 9 listed, right? Vyadhi, Sthana, Samshaya, Pramada, Alasya, Avirati, Bhranti Darshana, Alabdha Bhumikatva, Anavasthitvani. Right? Once we identify at any stage in our practice, it is useful to classify in which of these does it fall. Then it says, Pratipaksha Bhavana. When you have a particular experience, cultivate, there is a remedy given. Right? And above all, it says Ekatattva Abhyasa. The practice to rest in that oneness. Right? Although it seems ridiculously abstract, it's very powerful, in fact. So the work of finding the obstacles has been done for us by people like Maharishi Patanjali, right? And that classification is very effective.
Mhm.
So what I would encourage is, at every instant that we sit in a particular dhyanam session, whatever the thoughts arise, immediately you can classify them, right? First of all, we know if we are in physical illness, vyadhi. Sthana, sometimes we are lazy to engage in practice. Samshaya, we have doubt. That Bhagavan is clearing right now. Pramada, carelessness in the practice. Avirati, sexual over desire. Alasya, laziness, right? And then the final three, right? Bhranti darshana, false thinking that yes, I have attained this particular stage, this bhumika, or disappointment that I have not attained a certain stage, right? And then inability to maintain a certain level of practice. That is usually characteristic of the earlier stages. And but again, when practice is done and discussion with the right person can clarify that these obstacles very easily. And Bhagavan in that Yoga Sutra also several remedies are given, which is the particular remedy. So that's I believe a systematic way to address the obstacles.
Sure. Thank you.
It is amazing that how similar every human being is when viewed from the lens, when viewed through that analysis, right? I don't know how many billion and counting were the same tendencies. Whether born in this part of the world or that part of the world, whatever the color of the skin, same tendencies. That is the power of this analysis. It's not specific to any human being. It's generically applicable to all human beings. And so even though people may agree or not agree, may follow or not follow, it's a universal law. There are many born in India also who don't believe or agree. But it doesn't matter. The law applies whether you like it or not. Gravity applies whether you... There is that guy who got on some rocket, poor fellow, and tried to take off on his own. But gravity applied. Poor fellow died. You have to obey the laws, right? The laws always apply. Last verse. Who is going to read of this adhyay?
You can go.
Please.
योगिनामपि सर्वेषां मद्गतेनाम आत्मनात्राम
Antaratmana.
अंतरात्मनां श्रद्धवान् भजते यो मां समे युक्ततमो मतः.
So here Bhagavan is saying among the yogis, he's explaining the beauty and superiority that of this particular path. Yoginam api sarvesham, among all yogis. Mad gatena antaratmana. He who full of faith worships me, Shraddhavan bhajate. With Shraddha, full of faith there. Shraddhavan bhajate yomam. He who worships me, Shraddhavan bhajate yomam. Sat me yukta tamaha mata. Yukta tamaha is again, as I said, good, better, best. Superlative. He is most yoked. Him I deem the most integrated. Madgatena antaratmana. His inner self absorbed in me. Antaratma, antara, inward, atma. His inner self absorbed in me. He who full of faith worships me, him I deem the most integrated. So this Bhagavan is indicating that bhakti is needed. Right? So, yoginam iti, yoginam api sarvesham rudradityadi dhyana paranam madhye. Among all the yogis who meditate on Rudras, Adityas, etc., Madhyatena mai Vasudeve samahitena. He who worships me, serves me with his inner self, or whose inner self is absorbed in me, Vasudeva. Antakaranena shraddhaman shraddhanaha san bhajate sevate yahamam same mama yuktatamaha atishayena yuktaha mataha abhipretaha iti. He is full of faith, who is a believer, is considered by me the foremost or the best of the integrated. So, probably an explanation is in order here. Our beautiful Hindu philosophy and religion understands that the divinity manifests in many, many ways. 33,000 gods are reckoned, right? Among them, there are Rudras and Adityas. And we do worship each of them. We worship the same one in different forms for particular activities, because they have their spheres of influence. Right? But there is an acknowledgement that of all these, the Trimurti form, as Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara, are superior. And of them, in this sense, Vasudeva, as the incarnation of Vishnu in the form of Sri Krishna, is giving this Upadesh. So, what does this word Vishnu mean? Vishnu just means all pervading, actually, that which is everywhere. Right? So, think of this, and I always am tickled when this Shaiva Vaishnava debate arises, or the Iyer Iyengar business arises. From a very young age, it was very clear to me. Vishnu means that which is everywhere. Right? Shiva means that which is auspicious. Okay? If you believe in God, if your God does not have dominion everywhere, he is not God. If there is one iota of creation or place where God does not have dominion, that's not a God. God means should have lordship everywhere, right? So that means that is Vishnu. If that Vishnu property is not there, it's not God. On the other hand, if you're a Vaishnava and you think your God is not auspicious, then you're an idiot. So your God is Shiva also, right? So the Shaiva who does not believe the all-pervading nature of God is an idiot, and the Vaishnava who does not accept Shiva, the auspicious nature of God, is an idiot. That's all there is to it. So this Shaiva Vaishnava debate should be quelled forever, but it never dies, because the nature of the mind is always to create difference and find it wherever it can. This is the monkey mind. This is the only problem. So here, in most beautiful form, Bhagavan, in the form of the all-pervading, right, form, has manifested as Krishna and is giving this Upadesham. Right? If you read Narayana Suktam, you will see Shiva there. Right? These two are never apart. If you read Vishnu Sahasranamam, you will see Shiva there. Right? So these things are just childish things of the religiosity. Childish religiosity. There's no place for these things, strictly speaking. One should transcend, understand things for what they are, and move forward. But this ails Hinduism. I will tell you this bluntly. Even today, it has ailed Hinduism from the beginning. And it will continue to ail Hinduism unless people start truly understanding the works, opening up their minds, and cultivating the attitude of unity rather than difference. This is very important. Right. So let us say the last thing here. इति श्री महाभारते शतसाहस्र्यां संहितायां वैयासिक्यां भीष्म पर्वणि श्रीमद् भगवद्गीतासु उपनिषत्सु ब्रह्म विद्यायां योगशास्त्रे श्री कृष्णार्जुन संवादे ध्यान योगो नाम षष्ठोऽध्यायः। इति श्रीमद् परमहंस परिव्राजक आचार्य गोविंद भगवत पूज्य पाद शिष्य श्रीमद् शंकर भगवतः कृतौ श्रीमद् भगवद्गीता भाष्ये ध्यान योगो अभ्यास योगो नाम षष्ठो अध्यायः. So very nice. We have finished. Actually, I feel sad to finish Shashtha Adhyaya because I love it so much. But we have to leave Shashtha Adhyaya now and move. We have finished 6 Adhyayas, 1/3 of the way. And next time we will move on to Saptama Adhyaya. So, translated here as Yoga of Knowledge and Realization. So we will pick up that one next time. And this is actually a fairly short Adhyaya, only about 30 verses. And Jnana Vijnana Yoga. Indeed. Jnana, inward journey to knowledge. Vijnana, the outward manifestation of that knowledge as realization. So again, very beautiful, obviously. Lovely topic. We will take it up next time. Meanwhile, any questions on what we did today and the first 6 adhyayas? And before I say Shanti Mantram in that case, again, I will extend the invitation to our Sandhya Vandanam practice to all the ladies also. It is definitely appropriate to listen to the mantras. Vedic mantra, when chanted properly, sets up a vibration, and that vibration itself is beneficial. So just listening is good. Naturally, as I mentioned to others, although our Swami Mukhyananda correctly points out that Sandhya Vandanam was in the past practiced by ladies also, currently our social practice is not that they are doing Upanayanam and wearing Yagyopavitam, etc. And our goal is to create Sarva Bhuta Hita, to create benefit for the individual and the surrounding. So that is not something we are going to engage in, but definitely for anyone, any ladies to listen and benefit is absolutely correct. And it naturally happens in every household. When the gentlemen perform, Hindus perform, their wife listens, and they can be very well versed in these things just through Shravana. So there is no exclusion there. Again and again, I feel we want to make our entire Hinduism, it should be a space where you feel love, where you feel welcomed, where you feel inspired, energized. Because many people have felt excluded, unfortunately. That has created actually some problems, many problems. That is unnecessary. Sincere heart, faith in the Veda, right? And a love for the Veda, profound faith in the Veda, a desire to benefit from it and protect it. These are all that are required. If those criteria are there, anyone is welcome. Right? That's the message always. Achha. So I'll say Shanti Mantram is very delightful, enjoyable as always.
Shankar Mama.
Pardon me?
Question.
Sorry, I'm hearing a very faint audio. Is that Chetas?
Yeah.
Chetas. Can you speak up a little bit? Yes, I see you.
Question. So whenever I do meditation, I keep getting the thought that I shouldn't think of anything. That keeps coming up. What should I do?
there's a saying that if you tell somebody to not think of a pink elephant, the first thing they'll think of is a pink elephant, right? So very good. Yes. And truly, this I think you're raising a good point. So let me try to understand it. In the Buddhist tradition, they have this thing called empty bowl meditation, right? Where the idea is empty and I think it's a difficult practice, right? Is that what you're saying? That, yeah. So that something keeps cropping up, right? So how about we try the reverse? Let's try always to think about one thing.
Okay. But my problem is mostly I keep thinking to myself that I shouldn't think of anything. I normally don't think of anything else except for that. I said that's the one thought that keeps coming up, that I shouldn't think of anything.
So when we are doing meditation, it's useful to first meditate on some aspect, typically what we call Saguna aspect of the Lord. So, and most powerful there is the repetition of some mantra, right? So for instance, perhaps this is a very good lead-in to the Sandhya Vandanam practice that we're starting, where the core is the Gayatri Mantra, right? So what is beautiful about doing that is we make a sankalp, we decide, we make a resolve that I am going to recite this mantra X number of times today, right? And we go through the recitation of the mantra. And at that, when we are thinking of this chanting, it can be done in the early stages, it may be done with voice, right? Out loud. In time, more powerful is to do it mentally. But when we are doing that particular, whether it is, let us say first, chanting with sound, then we are going to employ every attention into that chanting. So the mouth has to do the ucharan correctly. Every akshara should appear in our mental frame in exact sequence, right? The level of attention should be very great. The punctuation, the stretching, the length, this should be paid great attention to. And if you do this, and you do it how many ever times you want, say 32 times a day, one sitting, however long you're able to, believe me, in 6 months, this problem will go away. So that is the power of the mantra diksha that our rishis have given us, that paying attention to the exact pronunciation. Like even when we start this, we say the dhyana shlokam, right? Every time I say it aloud, right? I have to pay attention that I give the due respect to every syllable. Think of it like that. Every syllable is sacred. My attention must not waver, right? I must give it that due respect. If you do that, there will be no space for these thoughts to arise. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right? Now, in the beginning, it will be hard, right? But this is more useful and powerful because there is a clear structure, right? There's no empty space. There's a clear structure. This has to be followed. The mind gets trained. It gets sequentially trained repeatedly. And the power of that then leads to the next level, where then it can be done. One can relax the external chanting, and the mind then wants to actually do the internal chanting. So try that.
Thank you, Shankar Mama.
Of course. And I think definitely Gayatri Mantra is universally recommended and known by many people. So I think that will be a very nice place to start. But very good question. It's a very, very sincere and wonderful question. And you have to be commended for attempting such a fantastic thing at such a young age. So more power to you.
Shankar, I have one follow-up question on
Certainly.
the meditation practice. When we do Gayatri, so Gayatri Japa, right? So this is the one of the most like impersonal, right? So I wonder about the visualization. So you mentioned that we try to visualize all the mantras, matra, and all, right?
Mhm.
In terms of visualization, so is there any deity or Gayatri Devi or any or when you earlier when you say like something visually or something you like most, right? So during the Gayatri Japa, would something that would be beneficial?
I think so. Yeah, mhm. I think not at the time of the japa itself. Actually, quite honestly, my feeling is that when we do the japa with that laser-like concentration on first the how shall we put it, the vaikari, the externalized sound. Vach has, right, vaikari, madhyama, pashyanti, para, 4 stages of sound. Vaikari is the spoken. So when, let's say we do that, it needs to be done to a point where now the mind wants to let go of that and only take the next silent meditation, right? So I believe that the chatting has to be done to a point till the mind wants to move inward, right? And at that point, the focus should only be on these syllables and the precision, right? It's a discipline. Once it's able to do that, so there are 2 schools of thought here. The visualization can be important, I believe, at an intermediate to advanced stage, but I think it's more beneficial when the so to speak visualization emerges on its own. Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
rather than imposing some image of the Devi that we think it should be, how about practicing to the point where she reveals herself to you, right? That
So-
would be the true goal, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
So, Dr. Shankar, you're saying that one should move beyond Vekhari only when the mind really wants to, and it
Yes.
cannot be imposed consciously.
I believe that is the case because I feel that when we try to accelerate too much, then it actually creates problems. Or, I mean, luckily here at least we have the benefit of having to discuss these things. But a lot of people have unpleasant experiences with meditation primarily because of this, I think.
So, until then, one should stick with Vekhari.
Yes, I think there is nothing wrong because I can tell you that today, if somebody chants, and I listen often to Vedic chanting, it is just blissful. That is bliss. That is itself, I can tell you that Vedic chanting properly done can induce samadhi in 1 instant. In 1 instant, it should. That's the level at which, that is its power, right? Right. If you go and listen to Sri Rudram said correctly, or you listen to anything, you listen to Taittiriya Upanishad, if it is said correctly, Udaka Shanti, in an instant, it will take you. And if you read Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna's thing, that's what he says, right? Isn't that right, Mahesh?
Yes, that's right.
There are certain things that just trigger it for him, right? So it's a wonderfully tried and tested method. Why not? Right? I sometimes think that because of a certain impatience in the new vogue, it has become a little in vogue to try these other things as a shortcut. And sometimes they end up being long cuts, right?
I think
By all means, I'm not saying that if you like to do dhyanam, go for it, right? But constantly reevaluate. If like this beautiful question that Chetas brought, as it is, right? Which is lovely, right? he's giving you the experience right there. And the solution is then in our tradition itself. Yeah. That's why he's such a valued member of our satsang. Acha, any other comments or questions?
And just on the same topic, Dr. Shankar, right? Like
Surely.
on that, what Chetas mentioned, I think when we think of meditation, we think it is as we need to keep our minds empty. You know, we should let it. It should be free of thoughts, and that's where what we strive for. And that thought comes up like, is you know that, and we get distracted. So I think your point about being focused on one thing, be it mantra or any other thing, rather than actively trying to make your mind empty, would definitely help.
Yes, I think the former can work at a certain stage. It can work, definitely. But I think it's a difficult thing to jump at directly. Right? After all, we know well that the power of the Om Pranava mantra itself, Pranava Japa itself, is the space between the Oms. Right? But can we meditate on the space between the Oms more easily, or can you meditate on Om more easily? Obviously, the Pranava itself, right? The meditation on the Pranava then leads to that space between the Om, between the syllables. So hopefully, good discussion. This is wonderful because we are not just discussing the Bhagavad Gita, but actually its deepest import. And it's, so I cannot say a better conclusion to this Dhyana Yoga Adhyay than this one. Very beautiful. Huh? Okay, so I will say our goodbye mantram, and then we can have a lovely weekend and see some of you tomorrow and all of you next week. Om Tachamyura Vrunimahe Gatum Yajnayam Gatum Yajnapataye Daivihi Swastirastu Naham Swastirmanushebhyah Urdhvam Jigatu Bheshajam Shanno Astu Dvipadehe Sham Chatushpade Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste everyone.
Thank you, Professor.
Well,
Namaste, Dr. Shankar. Thank you so much.
Namaste.
I will definitely